If you found this video, the hardest part is already behind you. And I know how that sounds. I know that right now, sitting where you are, carrying what you are carrying, that sentence might feel almost offensive, because the weight is still here. The confusion is still here. The nights that stretch too long and the mornings that arrive too fast, they are still here. And someone is telling you the hardest part is over. But stay with me, because this is not motivation. This is not a pep talk designed to make you feel better for 7 minutes before the old patterns swallow you whole again. What I am about to share with you is something far more confronting and far more liberating than anything comfort could offer. It is a recognition of what you have already done, what you have already survived, and what that survival actually means about the nature of reality itself and your relationship to it. You did not find this video by accident, and I do not say that lightly or mystically or to sound profound. I say it because the physics of how consciousness operates does not allow for accidents. Not at this level. Not when the search that brought you here was born from something deep, something that has been building in you for weeks or months or maybe years. A question you could not quite articulate. A feeling that the life you were living was somehow not the life you were meant for. A growing suspicion that everything you were taught about how reality works was incomplete at best and fundamentally inverted at worst. That suspicion, that quiet knowing that kept nudging you even when you tried to ignore it, that is not a malfunction. That is the most sophisticated navigational instrument you possess, and it has guided you to exactly this moment. So let us begin here, not with where you are going, but with what you have already come through. Because until you understand the magnitude of what is behind you, you cannot fully step into what is opening ahead. There is a phenomenon in physics that most people learn about in passing, but very few sit with long enough to let it rewire their understanding. It is called the phase transition. You see it when water becomes ice or when ice becomes steam. For a long time, energy is being added to the system and nothing visible changes. The water sits there, absorbing heat, absorbing heat, absorbing heat, and to any outside observer, nothing is happening. The temperature barely moves. The surface looks the same. If you were the water, you might start to believe that all that energy was being wasted, that all that effort, all that internal restructuring was producing absolutely nothing. And then, in what appears to be a single instant, everything shifts. The entire molecular structure reorganizes. What was liquid becomes gas. What was dense becomes free. What was contained becomes expansive beyond measure. And here is what most people miss. The moment of transformation, the visible shift, that is not where the real work happened. The real work happened in all those invisible moments when energy was being absorbed and nothing seemed to change. The real work happened in the long, silent, seemingly pointless accumulation of heat that no one could see and no one could measure from the outside. You are not approaching a phase transition. You are in one. And the hardest part, the part that demanded the most energy, the most faith, the most willingness to keep going when every external signal told you to stop, that part is behind you. You already did it. You did it in the dark. You did it without applause. You did it without proof that it was working. And that is precisely what makes it so powerful. If this is resonating with something deep inside you, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe so you can keep returning to this space whenever you need it. Let me explain what I mean when I say the hardest part, because I am not talking about the most painful part. Pain may still be present. I am not talking about the most confusing part. Confusion may still visit. What I am talking about is the part that required the most energy, the most fundamental reorganization of who you understood yourself to be. And that, whether you realize it or not, has already occurred. Think about what it took to get here, not just to this video, but to this place in your consciousness where you are even open to hearing that reality is not what you were told. There was a version of you, not long ago, that was fully embedded in a certain story. A story about who you are, what you deserve, how the world works, what is possible and what is not. That story was not just believed, it was lived. It was the water you swam in. It was the operating system running every decision, every reaction, every interpretation of every event in your life. And then something began to crack. Maybe it was a loss that did not make sense within the old framework. Maybe it was a moment of inexplicable knowing that you could not explain away. Maybe it was simply an exhaustion so complete that the old story could no longer sustain itself. Whatever it was, a fracture appeared. And here is what no one tells you about that fracture. It did not happen to you. It happened through you. Your consciousness, at a level deeper than your thinking mind, initiated that break. You called it in. Not because you wanted to suffer, but because some part of you that operates beyond the reach of fear knew that the old structure could not hold what you were becoming. That moment, that initial crack, that was the hardest part. Not because of the pain it brought, but because of what it required. It required you to begin dismantling a self you had spent your entire life building. It required you to stand in the space between who you were and who you had not yet become, with no guarantee that the ground would form beneath your feet. It required you to keep breathing in a void that your nervous system interpreted as death. And you did it. You are here, which means you did it. If this idea of phase transitions and the observer effect within your own consciousness is opening something in you, this video only touches the surface. My ebook, Beyond the Frequencies, A Quantum Guide to Consciousness. Mastery walks you through the complete system, all 9 master frequencies, from breaking free of survival static to living as the field itself, with layers upon layers of understanding and step-by-step practices you can embody daily. It's linked in the pinned comment below. Let that land for a moment. Do not rush past it. Do not let the part of your mind that is addicted to problems convince you that this recognition is premature. Sit with the fact that you have already accomplished the thing that most people spend entire lifetimes avoiding. You let the old self begin to dissolve. You did not run back to the familiar shore when the current pulled you out. You floated. Maybe you flailed. Maybe you swallowed water. But you did not drown, and you did not swim back. Now, let us talk about why you cannot see this yet. Why, despite having already moved through the most energy-intensive phase of your transformation, it still feels like you are in the thick of it. Why the freedom that is already yours has not yet registered in your body, in your emotions, in your daily experience. There is a delay built into the fabric of physical reality. Quantum mechanics has shown us that at the most fundamental level, reality exists as probability until consciousness collapses it into form. The observer effect is not a metaphor. It is the literal mechanism by which the immaterial becomes material. But that collapse, that translation from possibility into physical experience, it does not happen instantaneously in the way we experience time. There is a lag, a buffer, a space between the shift in consciousness and the shift in circumstance. This is where most people lose faith. This is the gap that swallows seekers whole. Because you have changed. You know you have changed. The way you see the world is different. The things that used to consume you have lost their charge. The patterns you once repeated without question now feel foreign, almost absurd. You are not who you were 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 5 years ago. The internal shift has already happened. But the external world has not caught up yet. Your relationships may still reflect the old frequency. Your circumstances may still mirror a version of you that no longer exists. Your bank account, your body, your daily environment. They may still be echoing a signal you stopped broadcasting weeks or months ago. And so your mind, trained in the old paradigm where external evidence is the only valid confirmation, looks around and says, nothing has changed. You are fooling yourself. This is not working. But here is what your mind does not understand. The external is always a delayed reflection of the internal. Always, without exception. What you are seeing around you right now is not a report on your current state. It is an echo of your former state. It is the last reverberation of a frequency you have already stopped emitting. And echoes, by their very nature, fade. I want to pause here and ask you something. What was the moment for you? The moment when the old story first cracked and you knew, even if you could not explain it, that something fundamental had shifted? Tell me in the comments. Not for me, but because naming that moment gives it power. This is not wishful thinking. This is how fields work. When you change the signal at the source, the field must reorganize to match. It is not optional. It is not dependent on luck or worthiness or some cosmic lottery. It is physics. The field responds to the frequency of the observer. Change the observer, the field changes. But the field is vast and dense and has momentum. And so the reorganization takes what we experience as time. You are in that time right now. You are in the sacred and profoundly uncomfortable gap between who you have become and the reality that has not yet caught up. And I want you to understand something about this gap that changes everything. This gap is not a problem. This gap is not evidence that something is wrong. This gap is the most powerful creative space in the entire universe. It is the space where worlds are born. It is the space between the last breath of the old and the first breath of the new. And your only job, your single task in this space, is to not go back to sleep. Let me say that again because it matters. Your only job right now is to not go back to sleep, not to figure it out, not to force it, not to manifest harder or visualize more aggressively or repeat affirmations until your jaw aches. Just do not go back to sleep. Do not re-enter the old dream. Do not pick the old story back up just because the new one has not fully materialized yet. That is it. That is the entire instruction for this phase. And if that sounds too simple, good. Because the mind that was shaped by the old paradigm believes that transformation must be complicated. It believes that anything worth having must be earned through struggle and strategy and relentless effort. But that belief is itself part of the old operating system. The new paradigm, the one you are stepping into, operates on entirely different principles. Resonance, not force. Coherence, not control. Allowing, not demanding. I want to take you deeper now into something that will help you understand why this particular moment in your journey is so significant, and it has to do with the nature of identity itself. For most of your life, you have operated under the assumption that you are a fixed thing, a person with a name and a history and a set of characteristics that define you. You might have been told you are shy or ambitious or broken or gifted or unlucky or resilient. And over time, these labels became load-bearing walls in the architecture of your self-concept. You built your entire life inside a structure made of ideas about who you are. What has been happening to you, the thing that brought you to this video, is that those walls have been coming down. Not all at once, because that would shatter you, but steadily, relentlessly, one belief at a time, one assumption at a time, one I am statement at a time. And this is terrifying to the part of you that equates identity with survival. Because in the old paradigm, to lose your sense of self is to lose everything. If you do not know who you are, how can you navigate the world? If you do not have a story, how can you make decisions? If you are not the person you always believed yourself to be, then who are you? What are you? This is the question that has been living in your chest. This is the unnamed weight you have been carrying. Not a problem to solve, but a cocoon to surrender to. Because the answer to who are you when the old identity dissolves is the most liberating answer in existence. You are the awareness in which all identities arise and dissolve. You are not the mask. You are the space the mask appears in. You are not the story. You are the silence from which all stories emerge. And this is not a philosophical abstraction. This is your direct experience right now, if you pay close enough attention. Notice right now that there is something aware of your thoughts. There is something that can observe your emotions without being consumed by them. There is something that has remained constant and unchanged through every phase of your life, every identity you have worn, every crisis you have weathered. That something is not a thing at all. It is the field of consciousness itself, and it is what you actually are. The hardest part was not realizing this intellectually. Many people grasp this concept and file it away as an interesting idea. The hardest part was beginning to live from it, beginning to let go of the handrails of identity and trust the open space, beginning to make choices not from who you think you should be, but from what feels true in the moment. Beginning to tolerate the absolute groundlessness of being no one in particular. That is what you have been doing. That is the invisible work that has been consuming your energy and producing no visible results and making you wonder if you are losing your mind. You have been dying to who you were, and death, even the metaphorical kind, even the kind that leads to resurrection, requires everything you have. So when I say the hardest part is behind you, I mean this. The death has already happened. The old self has already been released, even if its ghost still walks through your life, even if its habits still echo in your nervous system, even if its voice still whispers in the quiet hours. The core structure has already collapsed. You are not dying anymore. You are in the space after death and before rebirth. And this space, as disorienting as it is infinitely less demanding than the dying itself. Breathe into that. Let your body hear it even if your mind resists it. The dying is done. What remains is the blooming. Now, I want to address something that might be arising in you right now. A voice that says, "But you do not know my situation. You do not know what I am dealing with. You do not know the specific weight I carry, the specific darkness I face, the specific impossibility of my circumstances. And you are right. I do not know the details, but I know the pattern. Because consciousness moves through the same patterns regardless of the specific content. The details of your struggle are unique to you. The architecture of transformation is universal. Every seed breaks open in the dark. Every butterfly dissolves into undifferentiated cellular soup before it reforms. Every star is born from the collapse of something that came before. The pattern is always the same. Coherence, then dissolution, then a period of apparent chaos, then reorganization at a higher level of order. You are in the reorganization phase. The chaos is not increasing. It is resolving. And the fact that it does not look like resolution yet is exactly what the reorganization phase looks like from the inside. What is one old belief or identity you have already released, even if it was terrifying to let go of? Share it in the comments, because your words might be the exact permission someone else needs to release theirs. Let me give you something more specific now, something you can work with in the moments when the gap between your inner shift and your outer reality feels unbearable. Your nervous system, the physical infrastructure through which you experience reality, has been calibrated to the old frequency for years or decades. It has built neural pathways optimized for the old identity. It has established chemical baselines that correspond to the old emotional patterns. And even though your consciousness has shifted, your nervous system is still catching up. It is still firing old signals, still producing old chemicals, still generating old sensations that your mind then interprets as evidence that nothing has changed. This is not a failure of your transformation. This is the biology of transformation. The body is the last thing to update. It is the densest layer of your experience, and density takes the longest to reorganize. So when you wake up in the morning, and the old anxiety is there, or the old sadness, or the old sense of not enoughness, you are not experiencing your current state. You are experiencing your nervous system's memory of your former state. It is a recording, not a live broadcast. And the practice, the one thing that accelerates the update more than anything else, is to stop believing the recording. Not to fight it, not to resist it, not to try to override it with positive thinking. Just to recognize it for what it is. Oh, this is the old signal. This is the echo. This is my body remembering what is no longer true. And then, gently, to redirect your attention to what is actually here, right now, in this present moment, before the mind adds its commentary. What is actually here, right now, is awareness, presence, aliveness, the simple, undeniable fact of being. And that fact, that raw beingness, is untouched by your circumstances. It is untouched by your history. It is untouched by the stories your nervous system is still telling. It is the ground that was always beneath you, even when you could not feel it. Especially when you could not feel it. This is what the mystics meant when they spoke of the peace that passes understanding. Not a peace that comes from everything being okay. A peace that exists independent of whether things are okay or not. A peace that is not produced by conditions, but is the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. You have access to this peace right now. Not because you have earned it, not because you have done enough work, but because it is what you are made of. It is what you are. And here is where the science becomes breathtaking. Research in the field of psychoneuroimmunology has demonstrated that the state of your consciousness directly influences the state of your biology. When you access coherent states of awareness, states characterized by presence rather than reactivity, your heart rhythm becomes coherent. Your brain waves synchronize. Your immune function optimizes. Your gene expression literally changes. You are not just feeling better. You are becoming a different biological organism. This means that every moment you spend in presence, every moment you choose awareness over reactivity, you are not just having a nice experience. You are physically rewiring your nervous system to match your new frequency. You are updating the hardware to run the new software. And once the hardware updates, the external reorganization accelerates dramatically. Because now your body is broadcasting the new signal consistently, not just in moments of meditation or insight, but as a baseline. And the field responds to your baseline, not to your peaks. So the practice is not about achieving extraordinary states. It is about establishing a new ordinary, a new normal, a new resting frequency that is closer to who you have actually become than to who you used to be. And this happens not through grand gestures, but through the accumulation of small moments of remembering. Remembering what you are. Remembering that the old signal is an echo. Remembering to breathe. Remembering to be here. Let me take you somewhere even deeper now, because there is a dimension of what you are going through that is not just personal. It is not just about your individual transformation, as significant as that is. What is happening to you is happening through you, and it is part of something much larger than any single life. There is a field. You can call it the collective consciousness, the morphogenetic field, the quantum vacuum, the unified field. It does not matter what name you give it. What matters is that it is real, it is measurable, and it is responsive. And every individual who undergoes the kind of transformation you are undergoing sends a ripple through this field that makes it easier for the next person to do the same thing. This is not metaphor. Rupert Sheldrake documented this with his research on morphic resonance, showing that when a critical mass of individuals within a species learns a new behavior, that behavior becomes easier for all members of the species to learn, even those with no direct contact with the original learners. The field itself updates. The pattern becomes available to everyone. What this means is that your transformation, the one that felt so private and so painful and so invisible, is a contribution to the evolution of consciousness itself. Every wall you let crumble, every identity you released, every moment you chose presence over pattern, you were not just freeing yourself. You were carving a pathway that others can now walk more easily. You were updating the field. You were making awakening more accessible for every consciousness that comes after you. Feel the weight of that. Not as pressure, but as purpose. You did not go through what you went through for nothing. You did not suffer in the dark for no reason. Every ounce of energy you invested in your transformation has been deposited into a collective account that benefits all of consciousness. And that account is now bearing interest. This is why the hardest part is behind you. Not just because your personal phase transition is largely complete, but because the field itself has shifted in response to your shift. The wind is now at your back in a way it was not before. The current that was pulling you apart is now pulling you together. The same intelligence that initiated your dissolution is now orchestrating your reformation. And it is doing so with a precision and a timing that your mind cannot comprehend, but your body can feel. Pay attention to the synchronicities. Pay attention to the moments when reality seems to wink at you. A song that plays at exactly the right moment. A conversation that delivers exactly the message you needed. A door that opens without you pushing on it. These are not coincidences. These are the field reorganizing around your new frequency. These are the first visible signs that the echo is fading and the new signal is being received. And they will increase. Not because you are doing anything special, but because the gap between your internal state and your external reality is closing. Every day, the reflection becomes a little more accurate. Every day, the world around you mirrors a little more of who you have actually become. And one day, and it may be sooner than you think, you will look around and realize that your life has become unrecognizable. Not because you forced it into a new shape, but because you became a new shape. And reality had no choice but to follow. I want to speak now to the fear, because even as you hear these words and feel their truth resonating in your chest, there is a part of you that is afraid. Afraid that this is too good to be true. Afraid that you will let yourself hope and then be disappointed again. Afraid that you are the exception, the one person for whom the principles of consciousness do not apply. I want you to know that this fear is not a sign that something is wrong. This fear is the last guardian at the gate. It is the final echo of the old operating system, making one last attempt to pull you back to the familiar. And it is using the most sophisticated tool in its arsenal, which is the fear of hope itself. Because the old system knows that once you allow yourself to fully trust what is happening, once you stop hedging your bets and keeping one foot in the old world, the transformation becomes irreversible. And the old system, the old identity, the old story does not want to become irreversible. It wants to preserve the option of retreat. But you have already passed the point of no return. You passed it a while ago, actually. You just did not notice because you were too busy surviving the crossing. The bridge behind you has already dissolved. The shore you came from no longer exists. And the fear you feel is not a warning about the future. It is grief about the past. It is the old self mourning its own ending. And that grief is valid. It deserves your compassion. But it does not deserve your obedience. So let the fear be here. Let the grief be here. Let the doubt and the uncertainty and the trembling be here. But do not let them drive. Do not hand them the wheel. Let them ride in the back seat, acknowledged and honored, while the deeper knowing, the one that brought you to this video, the one that has been guiding you through the dark, continues to navigate. Because that knowing has not been wrong yet. Think about it. Every intuition you followed that did not make logical sense, every leap you took that terrified you, every time you chose the unknown over the comfortable, that knowing guided every single one of those moments. And every single one of those moments brought you closer to here, closer to this breath, closer to this recognition, closer to the freedom that was always your birthright, but that you had to forget before you could truly remember. You are free, not becoming free, not working toward freedom, free. Right now, in this breath. The cage was never external. The cage was a belief, and the belief has already been seen through. You may still feel the phantom walls. You may still flinch when you approach the space where the bars used to be. But the bars are gone. They have been gone for longer than you realize. And the only thing keeping you in the center of the cage is the memory of confinement, not confinement itself. Walk to the edge. Put your hand out. Feel the open air where the wall used to be. Take a step, then another. The ground will hold you. It always has. You just could not feel it through the numbness of the old story. There is a concept in quantum field theory called vacuum energy. It refers to the energy that exists in what appears to be empty space. Even in a perfect vacuum, where every particle has been removed, there is still an immense amount of energy present. The emptiness is not empty. The void is not void. What looks like nothing is actually the most potent something in existence. It is the ground state of reality itself, vibrating with infinite potential. This is you right now. You may feel empty. You may feel like everything has been stripped away. The old identity, the old certainties, the old sources of meaning and purpose. You may feel like you are standing in a vacuum, surrounded by nothing. But that nothing is the most powerful state you have ever inhabited. It is pure potential, uncollapsed, unformed, waiting for your consciousness to give it shape. Not through force, not through desperation, through coherence, through presence, through the simple act of being fully here, fully open, fully willing to receive what is trying to emerge. And something is trying to emerge. You can feel it, can you not? Beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, beneath the exhaustion, there is something pressing upward, something new, something that has no name yet because it has never existed before. It is not a return to who you were. It is not a better version of the old self. It is something entirely unprecedented, a version of you that could only be born from the dissolution of everything that came before. This is what the alchemists meant by the philosopher's stone. Not a literal stone, but the consciousness that emerges when all that is false has been burned away. The gold that remains when the lead of conditioning has been transmuted. And the transmutation was the fire. The pain, the confusion, the dark night, that was the fire. And you have already been through it. The gold is already here. You just need to let yourself see it. Consider coming back to this video each morning, even just for a few minutes, to let these words reset your frequency before the noise of the day begins. And if someone you love is in their own dark night right now, share this with them. When you pass this awareness forward, you create a ripple through the field that strengthens your own transformation while opening a doorway for theirs. That is how the collective shifts, one shared moment of recognition at a time. So here is what I want you to do. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, now. In this moment. I want you to close your eyes, just for a moment, and I want you to feel the truth of what I am about to say. Not think about it. Feel it. You have already survived the hardest part. The dissolution is complete. The old self has been released. You are standing in the open space of pure potential. And the intelligence that orchestrated your entire journey, every twist, every fall, every dark night, that intelligence has not abandoned you at the finish line. It is here. It is closer than your own breath. And it is already organizing the next chapter of your life with a beauty and precision that will take your breath away when you finally see it. Let that settle into your bones. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let the part of you that has been bracing for the next blow finally stand down. Not because there will never be challenges again, but because you now know, in your body, in your cells, in the deepest place you can access, that you are equal to whatever comes. Not because you are strong in the old way, the way of armor and resistance. But because you are strong in the new way, the way of openness and flow and trust in the intelligence that moves through all things, the hardest part is behind you, and what is ahead is not more of what you have been through. What is ahead is the harvest, the blooming, the materialization of everything that was planted in the dark. And it will not look like what you expected, because your expectations were formed by the old mind, and the old mind could not conceive of what the new consciousness is capable of creating. It will be better. Not better in the way the ego means better, with more stuff and more status and more security. Better in the way that a sunrise is better than a description of a sunrise. More real, more vivid, more alive, more yours. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are exactly where the intelligence of your own consciousness placed you, at the precise moment when the recognition of your freedom becomes unavoidable. And this video, these words, this moment, this is that recognition arriving. You are free, not in the future. Now. The prison was a thought. The chains were a belief. The walls were a habit of perception. And all of them, every single one, has already been seen through. The seeing happened in the dark, when you thought nothing was happening. The seeing happened in the pain, when you thought you were failing. The seeing happened in the silence, when you thought you had been abandoned. You were seeing through the illusion the entire time. You just did not know that is what was happening. Now you know. And knowing changes everything. Not because knowledge is power in the old sense, but because recognition is completion. You do not need to do anything with this recognition. You do not need to build on it, or leverage it, or turn it into a 5-step plan. You just need to let it be true. Let it permeate. Let it update every cell and every thought and every breath until your entire being resonates with the simple, unshakable knowing that you are already what you have been seeking. The search is over, not because you found the answer out there somewhere, but because you stopped long enough to realize that you are the answer. You have always been the answer. The question was never, how do I become free? The question was always, when will I notice that I already am? This is that moment, this breath, this heartbeat. This is the moment you notice. And from here, everything is different. Not because the world changes in an instant, although it might, but because you are no longer looking at the world through the lens of lack and seeking and not enoughness. You are looking at it from the place you actually are, which is whole, which is complete, which is overflowing with the same creative intelligence that shapes galaxies and grows forests and beats your heart without you having to remember to do it. That intelligence is not separate from you. It is not above you or beyond you or available only to the special few. It is you. It is the very fabric of your consciousness. And now that the old filters have been removed, now that the old identity is no longer standing between you and your own nature, you can feel it directly, not as a concept, as a living, breathing, pulsing reality. Welcome home, not to a place, to yourself, to the self that was here before the story began and will be here after the story ends. To the self that watched the entire journey with infinite patience and compassion, knowing that every step, even the ones that felt like mistakes, was leading exactly here. The hardest part is behind you. Trust that, not as a belief, but as a recognition of what is already true. Let your body relax into it. Let your mind stop spinning. Let your heart open to the possibility that this life, your life, is about to become something so beautiful that the old you could not have imagined it. And the new you, the one who is reading these words right now, the one who survived the fire and stood in the void and chose to keep breathing, that you does not need to imagine it, that you is ready to live it. If these words found you at the right moment, if something in your chest recognized itself in what was spoken here, then honor that recognition. Not by doing more, but by being more fully what you already are. Subscribe to this channel not as a habit, but as an anchor point, a place you can return to when the echoes get loud and you need to remember what is real. Leave a word in the comments, just one word that captures what you are feeling right now. Not for me, for you, so that when you come back to this video in 6 months and read what you wrote, you can see how far you have come, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Not everyone will be ready, but the ones who are right where you were when you pressed play, they will know. Just like you knew. The hardest part is behind you, and you are free. Now that you understand that your reality is reorganizing around your new frequency, go deeper into the mechanism behind it. Watch your attention creates reality, not your effort, because it reveals exactly how the observer effect collapses possibility into your lived experience. And it will show you why effortless presence is the most powerful force you can wield right now.